going on, members of the J Area? My name is Ramos Jr. Welcome back to another episode of the J Area Wrestling Podcast. And if you were with us this past weekend, we had a huge live stream following the Royal Rumble event. If you haven't had an opportunity to check that out, I highly suggest that you do so. We had a great conversation with a lot of old and new faces, a part of the J Area. But for today's episode of the podcast, we really are going to tackle the topic of the Royal Rumble. We had a great discussion during that live stream, had an open conversation with people who had watched the event, some people who maybe have missed the event. But now that we've had that opportunity to kind of let it settle, give it a second to marinate there, and really consider what had transpired at the Rumble, as well as what may lie ahead on the road to WrestleMania 41. There's a big discussion, a lot of controversy here, discussing the outcome of the men's Royal Rumble. Obviously, if you've seen the Royal Rumble, or if you haven't been living under a rock, you would know that main event Jey Uso emerged victorious, winning the 2025 Royal Rumble match, guaranteeing himself an opportunity at a championship of his choice at WrestleMania 41. It was a stacked Rumble, top to bottom, one of the deepest rosters that we've seen in a Royal Rumble matchup for quite some time. I know there's a lot of discussion that the greatest Royal Rumble event, not the one that happened in Saudi Arabia, but the greatest Royal Rumble of all time, was that of 1992. A deep roster. It was the early 90s, the golden era at its best, with stars like Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, The Undertaker, Randy Savage, Roddy Piper, so many other names to consider. But you look at the group of talent that was associated with this year's Royal Rumble. Obviously, there's the big three that I keep mentioning: Roman Reigns, CM Punk, John Cena, heavy favorites to win this year's Rumble. But then you have other stars such as Drew McIntyre, Sami Zayn, Rey Mysterio, Seth Rollins, Jey Uso. Deep, real deep. I mean, a who's who of talent. There is an argument to be made. The list of Hall of Famers that could be coming out of this year's Royal Rumble exceeds that of a lot of the people's expectations. Heading into the Royal Rumble, of course, the heavy favorites, as I mentioned, Cena, Punk, Reigns. Everyone thought it was going to be one of them. Every one of them had a story already lined up for them heading into this year's WrestleMania. Now, if you have watched the prediction video that I had uploaded en route to the Royal Rumble, you know that I was predicting a victory for one Second City Saint, CM Punk. I thought everything was it was laid out there for him. The story made sense. It was logic, and at the same time, it's what the people wanted. It's what I wanted, for sure. I thought CM Punk winning the Rumble would put to bed a lot of the demons that people like to bring up about him never winning a Rumble, never main eventing WrestleMania, and finally getting over the hurdle that was his injury-riddled past, whether that was in AEW or in WWE. We thought that was going to be his opportunity to punch his ticket to Las Vegas, Nevada, home of the Raiders, and be able to challenge either Cody Rhodes or Gunther for their respective championships. We saw in the Go Home episode of Monday Night Raw that promo, that segment between Punk and Rhodes, and it really, gets the juices flowing. It got me pumped up. I was ready to run through a wall after watching that segment because they touched on so many interesting details, whether it was behind the scenes or stuff we've seen on camera. And that's a very fine line to ride, especially nowadays with the advent of the internet. People like to think that they know everything that's going on behind the scenes. I'll tell you right now, guilty as charged. I'm looking at the reports. I'm reading the rumors and the innuendo, and I'm trying to keep up with all the stories that happen in front of the camera and also behind the camera. So in the heat of the moment, it would be easy to succumb to the idea that a guy like CM Punk would win. But then you have to ask yourself the question, are they pushing it so hard that it then becomes too obvious? Is it to the point where it seems like it's the obvious answer, therefore it won't happen? Because we've seen time and time again that is the case. Of course, there's also the name of John Cena, who is on his way to his final WrestleMania, trying to earn his 17th World Championship, trying to beat the record, the alleged record of the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. And we'll get to a Flair in a bit here later in the episode. Everyone was thinking it was one of them. Roman, there's an argument, but I don't think it was really a true possibility, given that he was champion for 4 years. They took the title off of him, didn't think we were going to put the strap back on him so soon. But under the radar, amidst all the chaos and all the uncertainty leading into the Rumble Royale, emerges an unlikely hero, an unlikely face, someone who's actually main evented WrestleMania in the past, someone who's actually been a part of the premier storyline within all of pro wrestling, and that's the Bloodline. Jey Uso, by hook or by crook, ends up winning the Royal Rumble in a shocking turn of events. I could name 5 people off the top of my head that I would have had winning that Rumble before I got to Jey Uso. Was it interesting and compelling and intriguing? Absolutely. But it wasn't something that we thought would happen because he literally just suffered a loss against Gunther for the world title on Saturday night's main event. So surely you're thinking, well, it's back to the end of the line for main event Jey Uso. But rather than that, they strap the rocket to him and they allow him that opportunity to outlast a who's who of stars. When we go back 10, 15, 20 years from now, and we talk about, hey, what was the deepest Royal Rumble? This is one that's going to come up. Top to bottom. Stars at every entrant practically. And you're going to ask who won that Rumble, and it's going to be Jey Uso. Upon the conclusion of the match, one, I'm stunned because I really thought Cena was going to win there between he and Jey Uso. Pleasantly surprised because, again, it's one of those things where you subvert the expectations of the audience. You set them up for one thing before dealing out something else. And Jey Uso shocks the world by winning the Royal Rumble match. We have our live stream. We have a great conversation. A great time to reflect on what had occurred in Indianapolis. And then you take to the internet. And it's like fan outrage. A lot of people are upset. A lot of people are unhappy that Jey Uso wins the Royal Rumble. The argument that's being made is there are so many compelling stories, so many other stars that should have won this Rumble. Again, we named the big 3. And everyone says that they're settling with Jey Uso. It's a wasted opportunity on Jey Uso. It should have been Punk. Should have been Cena. A lot of people are upset about it. If you ask me, I thought Punk was going to be number 1. That was my option. Then I thought Cena. Again, in terms of logic. In terms of moving forward with the story. And neither of those came to fruition. And here I'm left with Jey Uso, and I'm not mad at all. Because at the heart of it all, I've said it since day one. Stipulations, gimmicks like the Royal Rumble and the Money in the Bank contract should be utilized to push future talent, to get someone else an opportunity in being a main eventer. You can't always have the same guys winning the same matches, getting the same opportunities. And that's what essentially people wanted. John Cena and Punk don't need the Royal Rumble. They can get their championship opportunities any other way, and no one's going to bat an eye. Specifically John Cena, who has already announced that he's going to be a part of the Elimination Chamber in hopes of getting a championship opportunity and a big match at WrestleMania 41. But speaking of John Cena, I think it's very interesting that a lot of people are upset that he wins, or that he didn't win, rather. Because the biggest trope for the last 2 decades was Cena wins, lol. People had a lot of concerns and complaints, quite frankly, about John Cena just beating everybody. That he was always winning. Super Cena was the name that was bestowed upon John Cena. And now here we are in the year 2025. And people are upset that Cena loses. Everyone wanted him to win. And understandably so. I wanted him to win too, because I didn't think Jay was going to win. But he doesn't. Then Jey Uso is now punching his ticket to WrestleMania 41. Jey Uso, the guy who, when cutting a serious promo, really gets me emotionally invested in his story. Being one half of one of the best tag teams of all time, being one half of a pair of twins, where there was a time being where people couldn't distinguish the two between each other. And now here he is, on top of the world, one of the hottest stars in the company, one of the most over stars in the company. The real sign of knowing that you made it is when you start to have your haters, and the fact that Jey Uso has so many people riled up because of his victory is pretty ironic. It's pretty ironic. Here's a guy who many people thought was going to win Money in the Bank. Didn't win Money in the Bank. King of the Ring? Didn't win King of the Ring. And then he wins the Intercontinental Championship, drops it after 4 weeks, and people are upset that he only held it for that long. And now that he wins the Rumble, everyone's in an uproar saying it's one of the worst Rumbles of all time, when in fact, had any other outcome occurred, like Punk or Cena, and I guarantee you everyone was going to be saying it's one of the best Rumbles ever. I've been seeing things on the internet saying it was an all-timer up until the last few minutes. That's pro wrestling for you. You can ignore the entirety of a fantastic match, but if we don't like the outcome of that matchup, it is then tainted and is forever tarnished in our minds. It's a shame, but everyone's entitled to their opinion. Everyone's entitled to their feelings. I just don't think it's fair that they're immediately willing to trash the whole thing. Maybe give it time. Maybe. But then on the flip side, you also have to consider what happened last year. I mean, the whole Cody Rhodes and The Rock situation. We weren't fans of what was going on. People spoke up and they made the pivot, they made the switch, and we got the ending that we wanted. So hey, is it unfair to say that it'll never be changed? I don't think so, because we saw last year. Last year set the precedence. We'll have to wait and see. I'm intrigued as to where we're going to go with this. Jey Uso has already alluded to the fact that he wants to face Gunther. He thinks he's cracked the code. He thinks he has what it takes to defeat the world champion. He's already 0-3 against Gunther, having lost to him with an Intercontinental Championship matchup last year. Also lost in the King of the Ring tournament. And of course, most recently, at Saturday Night's main event. So Jey Uso's thinking fourth time is going to be the charm to defeat Gunther. We'll have to wait and see. But one thing you can't see, other than John Cena, will be him facing against Gunther, seemingly, at WrestleMania. So that begs the question, what is next for John Cena? Is he going to win the Elimination Chamber and therefore win a championship opportunity against, say, Cody Rhodes? Because that'll be an all-timer. Cody Rhodes versus John Cena, something that we have seen in the past because of the time and legacy. But in this iteration, this version of the characters, very enticing. To see guys like Cody and Cena in the ring, a true passing of the torch moment, or potentially a 17th world title for John Cena. Regardless, it is sure to be a spectacle. But the one outlier here, the one thing to make notice of, the WWE, especially in this current regime of Triple H and company, they don't do things without a reason. And I'm hoping a lot of people caught this, because while watching the Royal Rumble, you saw that John Cena entered the ring, did the classic sprint towards the ring, had Stu, the cameraman, following him all the way down the aisle. But the camera focuses on John entering the ring, but it also takes a second and it holds on Jacob Fatu. Deliberately. Not like, oh, we waited too long or it was a mistake. No, it deliberately held on to Jacob Fatu. We know that the bloodline, or at least Solo Sikoa, has a history with John Cena. What's to say Jacob Fatu don't have a problem with him either? Jacob Fatu versus John Cena. Very enticing. We've seen what he's capable of, he being Jacob Fatu. And to see him against John Cena, I think isn't out of the realm of possibilities. Do I think it's going to happen? No, I don't think it's going to happen at WrestleMania. But maybe there's a chance it does. And if not, I think it's something we revisit later this year. But John Cena, one of the all-time greats, will be hanging it up at the conclusion of 2025. Wasn't able to do so by winning the Royal Rumble, but nonetheless, it is something to keep an eye on. Hey, sorry to interrupt, but if you're anything like me and can't get enough wrestling content, then you should consider becoming a member here on YouTube. You'll receive access to exclusive content like unique videos, live streams, shorts, and a more behind-the-scenes look of the channel itself. On top of that, once you become a member here on YouTube, you will receive priority first replies in the comments, as well as special shoutouts in future uploads. And speaking of future uploads, you'll also be able to get to decide what will be the future topics in these future videos. You can join the J Area and become a member here by clicking on the link in the description, as well as in the link under the About Me section. This is your big opportunity to see the J Area like no one else. We can't thank you enough for the continued support and the continued growth in the channel, so we don't want you to miss out on this exclusive offer. Now, let's get back to the video. Another storyline that's been developing, especially with an advancement here in the Royal Rumble matchup, has been the story between three key players in the WWE's main event scene: Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, and CM Punk. We've seen that CM Punk and Seth Rollins have had their differences. CM Punk recently defeated Rollins on the first episode of Netflix's Raw. And of course, Roman is caught in between, having his differences with CM Punk, but also having his beef with Seth Rollins, a 10-year plus feud with Seth Rollins. But the way they shaped it up here at the end of their time in the match, after all being eliminated, it seemed to me like we were setting up a triple threat. Seth and Punk have their issues. They're having a brawl. Punk and Roman are having a words exchanged. And then Seth Rollins proceeds to deliver a curb stomp, but not just any curb stomp. He used both feet to incapacitate the tribal chief. You know Roman's going to have a beef with Seth because of that. Seth already has beef with Roman. Punk with both guys. Are we setting up for a triple threat? And if so, what's the reason? Because for me, it's always been about what's the reason when it comes to these matches. It's all about investment in the story and intrigue. No titles on the line. A straight up triple threat match? Don't know. Don't know, but it's certainly something to keep an eye on. Also, the Drew McIntyre situation. What is going on there? We've seen in the past that Drew McIntyre has had his issues with WWE stories, whether it's worked or shoot. But apparently, again, we go back to the reports and we take it with a grain of salt. I do want to point out here, for our new listeners to the J Area Wrestling Podcast, we don't treat the reports and rumors as gospel. Right? It's not final. It's just a little bit of smoke. And if you know anything, if there's smoke, there is fire. Drew McIntyre apparently really upset with his elimination at the Royal Rumble this year. Not because he didn't win, but apparently, again, if reports are to be believed, the sentiment is that someone kind of took it upon themselves to be the center of attention during McIntyre's elimination, and then kind of almost devaluing the elimination of McIntyre. It felt kind of rushed. It felt a little bit underwhelming as he was thrown out by Damian Priest. But when you go back and watch the Rumble, who was at the center of attention during his elimination? It was Logan Paul. Logan Paul was in the middle of the ring. LA Knight takes it as a cue because they have a beef. And you even see a little bit of a bump there between LA Knight, Logan Paul, and Damian and Drew McIntyre. It wasn't as crisp. It wasn't as smooth. It seemed like there was a timing issue there. Potentially, is there a little bit of heat between the social media megastar and the Scottish psychopath? I don't know. But that is, again, something to keep an eye on. The Royal Rumble was filled with surprises. Big shout out to TNA World Champion Joe Hendry, who emerged at number 15 in a surprise entrance. I mean, it was an unofficial surprise. We all knew that Joe Hendry had to make an appearance, having one of the best years of any wrestler in recent memory, getting really over, and I mean, a viral sensation, essentially. And then wins the TNA World Championship, defeating Nick Nemeth at TNA Genesis, and makes an appearance in the Royal Rumble. Had a good showing, had a great response, and a great pop there for Joe Hendry. I'm loving the potential of this TNA WWE crossover partnership. We've seen a lot between Joe Hendry, and Jordynne Grace, as well as the NXT Tag Team Champions Fraxim, who's been appearing more frequently on TNA Impact. But it's always such a great thing to see many wrestling promotions succeed. And we're talking about success. How about one of the most successful and influential streamers in the world in iShowSpeed? iShowSpeed had a little bit of a moment there at the Royal Rumble event. A lot of people knew that he and Kai Cenat were going to be in attendance for the Royal Rumble, and some people were saying, rather, I think all of us were saying, just don't be in the Rumble. Just don't be in the Rumble. And sure enough, iShowSpeed's in the Rumble. He takes over for Akira Tozawa's spot because he was unable to participate in the Rumble. A great little exchange there between he and Hunter. Sent him out to the ring saying, you have to fill in. You're in the Rumble now. And man, the spear that he received from Braun Breaker may have been one of the most vicious things I've seen in a wrestling ring for a while. I mean, the velocity, the speed, and the power behind that spear by Braun Breaker, I'm willing to bet money that he put a little extra juice on that spear because he wants to send a message. What we do here isn't all fun and games. He wrecked Speed. I mean, you talk about speed. Look at Braun Breaker. Goes off of one ropes to the other to one more and then completely impales Speed to the point where I was willing to bet he had a concussion. I don't know if he did or not. Nothing's come out regarding that. But I would not be surprised if Speed was concussed. Overall, I thought it was a fun interaction. I'm not always a fan of having the celebrities take a spot away from the roster, but the way this was executed, I wasn't even mad. Speed having a memorable moment there, a viral moment for his taking in the Royal Rumble matchup. And I mean, wow. But it wasn't the only Rumble matchup there, of course. We also had the women's Royal Rumble matchup, one that went a little bit under the radar, wasn't as heavily promoted as the men's, but nonetheless, I thought a good showing regardless. I thought it was the lesser of the two, but again, by no means is that saying that it was bad. I think, if anything, it's very similar to the Jey Uso situation, where it's a good matchup, it's just the ending is kind of overshadowing the entirety. Charlotte Flair wins again. She's the first ever woman to win 2 Royal Rumble matches. Of course, the first being in 2020 when she outlasted Shayna Baszler in the final 2 and had a championship match at WrestleMania 36 in front of no fans. It was a dark time. She wins the Rumble again, and again, it's one of those things where fans are kind of over it. Charlotte Flair wins again. What's new? Nothing much. We know that the mission is to get her to 16 title wins, just like her father. Now, say what you want about Charlotte Flair. I think she's one of the best women's wrestlers in the world. I just agree that the oversaturation of her in the main event picture and winning countless titles, it does get tiresome. It really does. It's very similar to how I was saying with John Cena 20 years ago. He got pushed down people's throats. A lot of people carry that sentiment, and they didn't want to see him win anymore. You remember the sign at ECW One Night Stand: if Cena wins, we riot. Charlotte Flair's in that position now, where everything she does, she's going to be criticized for it. And I'd rather her be a heel, because she's going to get booed regardless. But right now, they're kind of riding that fine line. If you ask me, looking at the post-conference show, the post-show, it seemed that she was kind of a little bit heelish there. I hope it stays that way. But you look at Charlotte, she's won. Who is she going to face? 2 options. Rhea Ripley, the woman that defeated Charlotte Flair for the championship at WrestleMania 39. They had a great matchup there. Some people consider it to be one of the best women's matches in WrestleMania history. Or she could go after Tiffany Stratton, some young blood, a new face in the division, because a lot has changed since the last time we saw Charlotte Flair in a WWE ring. We've seen the comparisons of the athleticism and the way these two have taken to the WWE style, and I do think the matchup between them really complements itself in terms of a stylistic approach. Both uber athletic, both certainly have the charisma, and if you look at it on paper, if you just put up a poster of Tiffany versus Charlotte Flair, and I'm sure it's going to get the attentions of the mainstream audiences because it's already a money matchup if you ask me. Who do I think she chooses? I think she's going to go Tiffany Stratton. I really think so. Because I can't see Rhea versus Charlotte already. I think we're going to have a different story for Rhea. Charlotte, though, I think they're going to put the title on her. And it's going to be at the expense of Tiffy time. Enjoy the title reign while you can because your days are numbered, Tiffany. Charlotte Flair is coming for that gold. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe this is number 15 for Mrs. Flair. Or Mrs. Andrade, I suppose. Speaking of championships, former two-time NXT champion Roxanne Perez had a great showing in the Royal Rumble matchup. Entered at number 3 following Io and Liv Morgan. She enters at number 3 and breaks the record for the longest women's Royal Rumble participant at 67 minutes. A great showing and was a runner-up. Was the last one out prior to Charlotte Flair winning. I didn't think that was going to be the case. I was pleasantly surprised. There was a moment there during the matchup towards the end where I thought, are we going to see Roxanne Perez win the Royal Rumble? Is this going to be the official call-up for her? But of course, that wasn't the case. Roxanne Perez, the prodigy, one of the best up-and-coming stars in the WWE in pro wrestling, really, has a long career ahead of her. Super happy for that performance, and it's only going to get better from there. I genuinely do believe that. As a member of the NXT roster, has been fantastic, having great matches and a lot of representation in the Royal Rumble by the Yellow brand, NXT. We're talking about stars like Jada Parker, Lash Legend. I already mentioned Roxanne Perez, but we also saw two of the biggest stars in the world, Stephanie Vaquer and the NXT Women's Champion, Julia. Deep. Super deep. One of the best women's rosters across the globe. This women's roster, I think, can put up a matchup against anybody and deliver. To see the representation there, it really warmed my heart. Because it's awesome to see these men and women from NXT getting the call up, being able to showcase their talents, especially because they're so used to being relegated to the performance center and performing in front of really just Florida and going around the world and doing so. It must feel super rewarding for them. NXT also was the home of that NXT TNA crossover series where we saw Jordynne Grace as a longtime member of that crossover events. And Jordynne Grace, who recently finished up her contract with Total Nonstop Action, is with the WWE, made her debut here, and looked phenomenal. I mean, just absolutely jacked. And a star quality performance in the making. Her interactions with the tag team champions, Naomi and Bianca Belair, was a highlight for me. But Jordynne Grace, is she going to be on NXT? She's already had her time there. Will we see her on the main roster? Wherever she goes, she's going to stand out. She's going to be a star. And how about those future potential matches? Jordynne Grace against Rhea Ripley, Bianca Belair, Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch. Dude, the list goes on and on. The juggernaut is in the WWE, and I cannot see them fumbling her at all. If they find a way, man, you heard it here first. But you know what? They had a decent track record when it came to surprises in the Women's Rumble. We talked about the NXT appearances. We talked about Jordynne Grace. We also got 3 returns from some faces from the past. Nikki Bella enters at number 30 to a good pop. She wasn't AJ Lee, but we won't hold it against her. We also got to see Trish Stratus, 7-time world champion, make an appearance here in the Royal Rumble, one of the all-time greats. But the pop of the night goes to Alexa Bliss. What a return. The crowd was electric. The presentation, the music, the commentary too, acknowledging the reports online. Michael Cole saying the internet said she wasn't going to be here, and Wade Barrett made a comment along the lines of, never listen to the internet. They really got us. They really did. They got Dave Meltzer for sure, because he was one of those reporting saying they're very far from making an agreement, but nonetheless, Alexa Bliss makes her return. Awesome to see her. Glad to see her back. It's been quite some time since we've last seen Alexa Bliss, but the fact is she's back in the WWE, and I want to see some interaction between the Wyatt Six maybe. She had the Fiend-inspired gear, so will we be seeing some sort of interaction between her and the Wyatt Six? And also just to point out, Nikki Cross, who is in the Wyatt Six, and her do have a history. Former tag team champions. I love it. I love where they're heading with this. Can't wait. You know what else I loved? That ladder match. Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens. an all-timer, I thought. We haven't seen a great ladder match like that in quite some time. We've had a lot of Money in the Bank matches, some TLC matches, but Cody and Kevin delivered a brutal ladder match. I mean, you saw the ending effects for Kevin Owens. That Alabama slam through the ladder left Kevin Owens as a heap of his former self. Either he was really hurt or he could really sell, because that Alabama slam through the ladder looked lethal. And the imagery of having Sami Zayn there to console his friend Kevin Owens and having Cody Rhodes over the top looking over both of them, the kids say it's cinema. And it really is. A great showing by Cody and Kevin. I thought Kevin was going to lose this matchup. I was already heading into it thinking he would, and would maybe make an appearance in the Royal Rumble. But following that match, I knew, okay, he's done. He's done for the night. He's not coming back. And we don't know when he's going to be back. I'm thinking Kevin Owens is going to be gone from TV for some time. And then Cody, apparently sustaining some injuries of his own, kayfabe, of course. So where will he be the next time we see him? We don't know. Has to defend his championship, though. I mean, we're looking at the possible list of names. CM Punk, John Cena, just to name two. Maybe Jey Uso. He can still choose Cody Rhodes if he ever wanted to. But I would love to hear from you guys in the comments below. Who do you think Cody Rhodes should face at WrestleMania 41? And what do you think is a matchup that would make the most sense in terms of that championship title? WWE is on fire. Whether or not you look at the comments and you read them and you see all the discourse about the Royal Rumble, ultimately it is up to you. You guys get to make that decision and have your own opinions about it. You want to share them? Go off. Go right ahead. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you are not new to the podcast or this channel, you already know my stance in terms of wrestling fans. We all can be a little bit negative every now and then, but me personally, I try to be as positive as I can. And although Punk and Cena didn't win, I'm not going to completely trash and panic right now. I'm looking forward to WrestleMania 41. You should all be looking forward to WrestleMania 41. And I want to hear you guys in the comments below. What are some matches that you want to see at WrestleMania 41? Or what are some of your favorite WrestleMania moments of all time? I'd love to hear from you guys and your guys' perspective in terms of your wrestling fandom. Also, be sure in the comments if you've listened to this far into the podcast. If you've listened this far, first of all, you're a real one. You're one of the realest of the real, and a great contribution to why I enjoy doing this. Allowing this opportunity to speak with you guys about the one thing that I've always been super passionate about, and that's professional wrestling. It has garnered me so many great memories, and at this point in my YouTube, career, it's opened up so many friendships with people that I never even knew. So to see dedicated fans of pro wrestling and friends of the show itself, people like Gabs, shout out to Gabs, Sylvia, Alex, Kevin, obviously San Fran 5, Mama Ramos, the Diva as well. Shout out to them as well for continuing to support this venture and allowing me a chance to share my thoughts, to share my fandom with a larger, widespread audience. So if you are familiar with the show and with the channel, super thank you. Appreciate it so much. And if you're not, and if you're new, I should say, welcome aboard to the J Area. We talk about pro wrestling here. It's a fandom. It's a family at this point. Of course, sound off in the comments below. What were your thoughts on the Royal Rumble? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you fall in between? I'd love to get your guys' feedback on that. If you haven't already, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up and also subscribe to the channel to keep up to date with all the pro wrestling content that we have here on YouTube. And consider becoming a member of the Main Event Mafia, where you're going to get exclusive content unlike anyone else on YouTube. Big thanks to everyone there. Hopefully the week will treat you well. Can't wait to see you all for our Monday night live stream as well. My name is Jose Ramos Jr. Thank you again for joining us on today's episode of the podcast, and we will all see you next time.